Hello, everybody. I'm just going to wait for a few people to join us as we're starting. I'm just going to wait for a few people to pop in. Hi, Jillian. Hello. So I'm just going to wait for a few people to join us, and then I will invite you now, and then I can do the intro with you here. Let me just try and invite you. Just one second. Is there a little button at the bottom that says join the chat? There we go. To you just now. Hello.
Hello. We did it.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. So before we get started, I'm just going to do a little intro to you and to your book, people who are viewing, and then we'll get started with some questions. So we're here for a conversation with Jillian today, who has a new book out, which I saw in shops not too long ago, called Transitioning Later in Life, which I feel is a much needed new book to the market. And it's published by Jessica Kingsley Publishers, which if you want to go and buy it just now, we have a discount code, which is ODL21. And you can use that to go and buy Jillian's book either now or after this chat. So just before I introduce Jillian, who's here with us, I'd like to introduce myself. So I'm Harry. I'm the Opening Doors London Trans and Non-Binary Officer, and I work with over 50s trans people and have a safe, supportive group that meet once a month. So if you're interested in joining that group, please just send us a message and we'll get loads of information to you about help and support and social activities that we can do. So on to Jillian and her newly published book. So I read it recently and it's very well written. Congratulations on the presentation. So it's a personal guide, isn't it, where we flip from your own experiences, some of which, you speak quite honestly and openly about, but also you have, which I find really cool and interesting, is some really helpful tips at the end of each chapter, which go into some help and some guides that the older people who are transitioning and at the start of their gender journey can access. And I found that really moving because I don't think there is a lot of support and resources directly for older trans people. So I thought that was really different about this book. So the only thing I would like to say before we begin the questions that I prepared is that if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Jillian, please just put them in the comments and I will do my best to filter and ask those, but just feel free to do that if you would like. So Jillian, would you like to introduce your book to us and how it came about, what it is you wanted to achieve, and yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you so much for even having me here. This is really exciting. Of course, I would love to have been there in person,
Yeah.
But this is okay. I'm pretty happy. Yeah, what made, I don't know. I'm not a writer. I never thought I would ever write a book, but after my transition, I started to tell my story to other people, and they seemed to be really fascinated by it. And I noticed it started helping other people. So that's what gave me the idea. I wanted to, hey, why don't I write a book? So I just started typing and typing and typing, and then the words just started flowing. And I was at a convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where it's one of the largest trans conventions there is. And this is where I met Kingsley Publishing. They had a table there. Amazing people. They talked. I pitched my idea to them and they said, please send us a manuscript. And so I did. And then they talked about how, and I know there's a lack of books for older trans people. There's a ton of, books out there for younger youth, which is great because it's so important. So knowing there was a lack, I'm like, you know what, let me share my story because I want this to be not only just sharing and giving tips, but I want it to be motivational. I want people to know, you can be whoever you want at whatever age you want, and you can be happy. And so that was one of the reasons or my motivations to write this book.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can see the publishing world as something that's very inaccessible and something that you have to be like a proper writer to write, and it's a very scary process. Can you talk a little bit about, so you met Jessica Kingsley, who are your publishers, at the convention. Can you talk a little bit about the pitching process and whether that was scary for you, the process through actually writing it, because I know it's quite an overwhelming experience, and then actually seeing the book in real life and on the shelves? How has that been for you?
Oh, it's just been surreal. It's been so exciting. Yeah, the first thing I said when I was talking, to the people at the booth there was like, I don't write. I don't know how to put sentences together. I mean, I do, but as a book for people to read, and they were just assured me, just get it on paper, write it. We will help you. We will walk you through it and edit it. And so the best advice is just write. Don't worry about your grammar. Don't worry about spelling. Just write. And then once I did that, it flows. So then I finished my manuscript. I pitched it to them. We went back and forth. The editors are amazing. The copyright, I mean, everybody was so helpful, so kind, and made it really, really simple. So we went through this process for a few months. The next thing I know it, I approved the manuscript, and then a few months later, they were excited about it, and we went ahead with it. And unbeknownst to me, I get a box one day in the mail, and there's 6 books in there. And this was so cool because I had no idea they were going to do that. And so I have this book, and I opened the box, and I wish I should have recorded it. And so to hold something tangible that I never thought I could do, it was just an amazing feeling. You just feel so empowered. You know you're going to help a lot of people, and it was just a really good feeling. So the process overall was great. Arthur was my main person who I was dealing with, and again, it's just an amazing person and walked me through everything. So it really wasn't that difficult.
So the actual writing itself, like you talk about some very difficult experiences in there. I don't think you'll mind me saying that in the book you speak quite a lot about suicidal tendencies that you had, and you wrote a suicide note which you include in the book, which I found very moving. How difficult was it to relive those experiences, and was it therapeutic to write about it? Did it bring back memories? Did you see how far you've come? Like how was that experience of there's a really difficult experience to write about. How was that?
Yeah, as I say in the book, the note, I really debated should I do this, but I wanted to, because I figured if I'm going to write this book, I'm going to bare my soul, and I want people to know. I keep that letter because it keeps me away from that dark spot of my life, that period of my life, and because it scares the hell out of me. And seeing, as you just said, seeing that letter and seeing where I am today goes to show how far I've come. But it also, the whole point of that is, if anyone should get to that dark spot, you gotta talk to people. Thank God I was seeing a therapist at the time, and she didn't even know about it. But because she was there in my life, I had the courage to tell her about it. So it is just so important to reach out to people, even in that dark time, because that was a very scary time. It was, I can't even explain, how it was just a low time. But you can come out of the lowest of the low. I did it. I couldn't have gotten any lower than that. But you can overcome it. I promise you can. I want people to know that. That's why I put that in there.
Yeah, I think that really resonates, and your book goes on such a journey from that moment particularly, and we'll go on to just a minute the two marriages that you had, which you divorced from those people for varying different reasons, to who you are today. Is quite a phenomenal journey that you've been on, and it really shows. So thank you very much for telling your story. So on that, I've just got a few questions left of me. This is why I'm looking over there, by the way.
Sure.
You talk quite early in the book about knowing that you were trans from an early age, but not necessarily having the tools and language that we have now, or that trans youth have now, to be able to talk about it. And then it wasn't until how old were you when you then realized that you had this language to be able to actually explain and come out as trans? How long was that period?
You know, the language to come out and say it was in my 50s, believe it or not. It took that long. I mean, this is something I knew since I was like 5 years old. But as you said, there was no language. There was the word transgender wasn't even invented. I think it was transvestite back then, which has a very negative connotation. You're weird, or you're, you know, all that. So no, there was no language. There was no social media. I thought I was the only one who felt this way, probably up until I was into my late teens. You know, and so that really made it difficult. But it, you know, when I realized that people were talking about it and people were coming out, and I started seeing celebrities and I started seeing sports figures, and I started seeing, wow, people are actually, maybe there are little pockets of people who would accept, you know, who you are, and it may be different. And so that started kind of building up my, you know, like, I can do this. However, when I was at that low point, I decided either I'm going to transition or I'm going to die. It came down to that. And so I didn't want to die. And so I decided I'm going to transition, and I just gathered what the resources I had and just put it all together, and just pushed through it with a lot of therapy, support groups, and just having a whole support system gave me the courage to finally say, I'm going to do this.
So we have one support group that meets every month, which is a trans-specific support group for people who are over 50. And you talk a little bit at the end of your book about going to, I think it was an hour away, the trans group that you went to. So quite far away. And how was that for you going to it? Was that the first time you'd met trans people? Was it the first time that you'd really, how was that for you? Because I know it can be quite an intimidating and scary experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, simply put, it was life-changing. At the time, my therapist and I were looking for a trans, say someone who works with trans people, a therapist or a support group. And there was nothing in my state. You know, there was just, we could not find anything. So this was in New York, which I live next to New York. And we found somebody who does support groups. So to me, like, there was nothing going to stop me. I was on a journey now. So yes, I actually took a ferry over. You know, I paid all this money, took my car on a ferry, went over. He actually even stayed overnight because I figured it's, you know, I don't want to do it come back the same day. And I'll never forget that day. I was in the parking lot. I was having so much anxiety. My heart was racing and my hands were sweaty, and I couldn't get out of the car. And I'm like, I just came all this way and I'm not going to go in, because I was really, but breathing and just kind of reduced my anxiety, and just, I had nothing to lose. And the next thing I know, I was walking into the building. That was really the first time I've met other trans people. Yes. And when I walked in, immediately, I had no idea how warm and welcoming the whole LGBT community is. They knew it was my first time. They could tell on my face I was scared to death. And they just welcomed me. They said, come on, sit down. Don't be nervous. We've all been here. And so I was like an hour-and-a-half meeting, and we went for like food after. And I knew my life was never going to be the same, because I realized, wow, there's a whole world out there that I've been missing. And so that was life-changing. That was that experience. And then I started pursuing then I found closer places and support groups. But that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of trans and queer and LGBT people will echo that experience of finding your crowd, finding your tribe, and being really thankful, actually, that you are trans and you have this experience, because you're able to meet such amazing and wonderful people that without, you know, your life wouldn't quite be the same. And that's something that I have certainly experienced as well, even though we live completely different lives, completely different areas of the world, and yet we have this kinship, and this shared experience is amazing. So I'm just having a look at the questions, and I've got some questions that have come in at the bottom here as well. So I'm just going to filter them through. Can you remember the first time that you came across the word transgender or transsexual, as it was, and did that resonate with you at the time, or did it take those 55 years to really like understand yourself and your transness?
Yeah, it did take a while because, again, remember when I was growing up, that word wasn't even invented. We were either going by transvestite or transsexual or crossdresser. And my only knowledge of it was either on these talk shows called like Phil Donahue, Maury Povich, or all these Sally Jesse Raphaels. I don't know if they're popular over there, but they would have these men who, they would say they changed their sex to women. This is the language they would use back then. And then a lot of it was made fun of. They would laugh like, guess who's a man and who's a woman? And it was hard to see that because it was all being made fun. And then there are ones who came on other talk shows. It was just a lot of negative connotation. So it was hard to get through that. However, it started changing. And then I started seeing that they were just normal. I hate to use that word, but just average people living average lives and being accepted. So that's, when I started realizing, okay, this isn't so bad, but it was very negative. But then when the word transgender did evolve, the word, it made it sound much more acceptable and much more doable to continue my journey, into who I was. So it took a long time to get where I am with these words and how I feel.
Yeah, of course, of course. So what struck me about reading your book is that you had two marriages, which both eventually ended in divorce for various reasons. And you wrote, which really struck me because I haven't read this in literature really before, is that you thought that marrying women and dating lots of women would cure you of your transness. Can you talk a little bit about why you think that you felt that way, and how perhaps your perceptions have now changed about how it is to be, a woman, or this kind of language around curing transness? I found that really really striking, actually.
Yeah, and it's very true. I was so desperate. So think back when I was in my teen years. I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was a freak. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I was desperate to get rid of these feelings. I just wanted to be a guy. I said, well, I just want to be the manliest man and this guy I could be. And so what do guys do? They marry women. That's their tradition and do all that. So I really believed that marrying a woman would just chase those feelings away. I mean, this is how distorted my thinking was and how desperate I was back then. And so I got married, and the first marriage, I was in my early 20s. It lasted a whole year. Because what happened, it did the opposite. I isolated myself, and I became more introverted, because now I had to suppress. The more I suppressed these feelings, the worse the depression and anxiety became. So it backfired on me. So I divorced her, and then, I thought, well, let me date. And so I did a lot of dating, and everybody thought I was this persona, or this whole facade that I created was this macho alpha male dating women. I owned my own business and just had the life, and each time it just killed me a little bit. Every time I would date someone, they would fall in love with me, but I couldn't fall in love with them because, as I say in my book, I hated myself, and you can't love someone if you hate yourself. So each relationship went so far, and then I would just like, you know what, I'm not feeling it. I'm breaking up with you. And I never told anybody why. I was too embarrassed to say the truth. I would just say I fell out of love. And then my second marriage, which was, later on to 2000s, lasted 5 years. And I thought, like, I got married again. I said, well, because I told her, I was able to tell her I like to dress in women's clothes, and maybe we can do it like once a month. And she tolerated it. So I thought, well, this is good enough for me. Let's get married. We can make it work. And then after 5 years, I divorced her, and that devastated me. That's what destroyed me, because I saw the hurt that I caused her, and the hurt that I caused all the past relationship kind of just parlayed into me. And that's when I got to my darkest point. So the moral of the story is, no, getting married and doing macho things and trying to be a guy when you're really not is only going to make things worse. And so that was a really valuable lesson that I learned, and that's why I put that in the book.
Yeah, I think that really resonated, because I think as trans people, sometimes we try and cover up for our transness. because we try and be hyper feminine or hyper masculine in order to cover for that. And then people are quite surprised when you come out, because it's like, oh, well, you're that kind of person. It's like, no, I never was. That was all a cover, because I was too subconscious and scared about coming out. So we have a question from Carlin, which I'm just going to ask right now because it feeds in quite well.
Okay.
Is Carlin's question is, do you find that as a late transitioner, the social aspect of transition more difficult, presumably, than it would be if you were younger? He's said, I also transitioned in my 50s and find social situations difficult. So I guess that's a question about what's the differences do you feel about transitioning later in your 50s rather than if you had the chance to transition when you were younger?
You know, that is a great question. And because I work with youth as well, I work with a lot of trans youth. I would say that it's equal. I don't think it's I think it's just as difficult if transitioning later in life than transitioning as a teenager. Now, what I mean by that with socially is, it is difficult. Don't get me wrong. This journey is difficult no matter what age you are. But I found, like, being older, and yeah, I came across a lot of challenges. But I always try to find a way around them. Now, as youth, they have their challenges. They may not seem as big to us, but to them, that's the world. Well, I mean, that's everything. If you don't get accepted in school or something, or think about trying to transitioning in school, how difficult that must be, but then we have to transition at work, say, which is, however, I really think, and again, it's such a good question. I think that it's equal, only because I've seen youth go through their tough times, and I also seen myself and other people go through these challenging times. And I hate to say the grass isn't always greener, and I just think it's equally challenging for no matter what age.
Colin's also, I would agree, by the way, but so Colin's also asked a second question, which I think is a really interesting one, which I hadn't thought of actually, which was, when you're speaking about your past to people, I mean, I don't know in your life, I don't know if you're out to everyone or new people that you meet, do you have to make up like an imaginary past where if people don't know you're trans, for example, perhaps that you use like other gender pronouns for yourself, or because you've got a rich past, that's 50 years of your life.
Wow, I could spend a whole hour just on that question. Yes and no. It depends on my mood. It depends on the person. If they're talking about a past, I have just gone with it and just kind of danced around it, used gender neutral pronouns, or just said, oh yeah, when I was a child, or instead of when I was a little girl or a little boy, but there are times where I mistakenly outed myself. For instance, I went to an all-male high school. And so someone asked me, where'd you go to high school? And I just said it, and they're like, wait a minute, isn't that for boy, all male? And I was like, there, I just outed myself. And so I laughed, and we all made fun of it, and we all laughed, and it was actually a learning experience. But most of the time, I will just go with the truth, unless they're a stranger. If it's just a stranger out at a supermarket or somewhere out and they're talking, I'll just kind of keep it neutral. And sometimes I do maybe patch up a little bit when I feel it's necessary. For the most part, I'm all out there straight honest, because I don't want to bring shame. By making it up, then you feel like you're bringing shame to yourself. But for the most part, I tell the truth, and I deal with it, and I laugh about it.
Yeah, I'm the same. So I transitioned when I was 18, and although it's not 55 years of time that has gone by, it's 18 years, it's my childhood. And when people ask me questions about my childhood, it does feel disingenuous and like you're lying if you change that narrative. And for me, I found it really liberating to be like, no, that's my trans history. It makes me who I am today. And I'm not going to lie about it, because I haven't gone through this path to lie. I've gone down this path to tell the truth about me and about my experience. So I think that's, being honest generally is the most liberating experience, but it can be a safety thing as well, depending on who you're with and what the situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was going to say that you got to consider, safety and being safe. And that's when that's such a great point of when you may need to make up a story or not be totally truthful about it.
Yeah, of course. So you call the second, or you call your life since transition the second act of your life, which I really love. Like I find that new lease of life kind of thing really like a really nice phrase.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, how has transitioning made you feel more at peace with yourself? I mean, you talk quite a lot about how much you hated that past life, but how has your life changed now? How do you feel?
Amazing. I think one of the biggest differences is after I transitioned, and I don't mean it literally, but just the noise or the voices of like, why can't I be like this? Why am I like this? Why am I, why? All those haunting thoughts and voices have just faded away because now I'm presenting myself. Now I don't have to pretend. I don't have to act anymore. You were just pretending your whole life. So it brought my second act, as I said, has brought just that peace, is just getting rid of all those all that sound and all that noise that was so painful. And that's why I call it peaceful, because now it's quiet, or it's enlightening. It's like a ray of sunshine that's in my body now. And I appreciate it every day. I acknowledge it. I make sure I acknowledge it every day. I look in the mirror sometimes and I'm like, I can't believe it. Like, I really did this. Or there's just moments, or when I get called her or ma'am, I can appreciate it. I just stop. And I always tell, just live in the moment. This is what peace is. Just absorb these moments in. So for me, it was just, again, all that noise, all that, it was just silence finally in my head. That's what brought me peace, as in my second act.
Yeah, yeah, I like that a lot. So someone called Siege has said, uh, how does it feel to know that so many people, especially the rough, tough cream puffs, I imagine you know what that is, love, support, appreciate, and look up to you. How does it? Well, you've clearly got a lot of admirers for what you're doing and the work that you continue to do around trans youth and that kind of thing as well. So how does that feel?
First of all, beyond amazing. I mean, I do it for them. I don't do it for me. I do it for them because well, first of all, I should back up. The Rough Tough Cream Puffs, I run a support group for trans youth, two support groups. So we have called us Rough Tough Cream Puffs because I think it fits them perfectly. These kids are rough, tough, but they are cream puffs. And so yeah, we do monthly groups, we do activities. Everyone gets to be themselves, whether their life is in turmoil or not. So it's just great. I just sit back and I just watch them laugh. Just the dysphoria goes away, the anxiety goes away, the depression goes away for the hour and a half or 2 hours we're together. Can there be anything more rewarding than just watching that? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I completely agree. We run a trans group as well, so I
Yeah,
completely get what that means for you. Um, so you wrote that although you're in your late 50s, sometimes you find it difficult to see yourself at that age. And I think a lot of people might think that's because, you've only been like seen as female in society for a relatively short period of time. But actually, which I found quite interesting, you said that's because you're so excited about life, because you've got so much to yet to experience about, with this like femaleness that you have that society now sees. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're excited about, what you've talked a little bit about everyday situations, about being called her or mom,
yeah.
that's been really exciting, but is there anything particularly that you're looking forward to that you're yet to experience?
Oh my gosh, everything. Yeah, well, yeah. First of all, I will never act 60. I don't even know how to act 60. Not that 60 is bad. I just, one of the things is I am back in school. I'll be graduating in May with my master's degree in social work, because I did my undergrad last year in psychology. So I want to be a therapist for the trans community. And one of the things I'm most excited about is walking down that aisle. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be the only trans 60-year-old woman getting a diploma that day. So that's like one of the most exciting things that I'm just like educating, and that's like the top thing right now. And I also am excited about doing a lot of advocacy, and I love talking and I love traveling. And I promise you and I are going to meet one day in person because I'm getting back over, to England. But so, yeah, I think I woke up to this education and then meeting people in these groups and traveling and just, I want to experience places. And again, you're right. I've been legally female for like 6 years. And so it's just a new experience, and everything I've experienced before was in a dark place. And now it's new. And I just want to experience everything. And that's why I could never, that's why I feel like I'm in my 20s, so to speak. I don't dress like I'm in my 20s, although I want to sometimes. But and also I also like a lot of the people I go to school with, most of them are in their mid-20s, and they're just amazing. Like they just have no problem accepting me, and they include me in a lot of their activities. I'm like, seriously, you want me to come to dinner or happy hour? And so I get to hang out with a bunch of college kids, and they're just so sweet. So I'm very lucky. So I guess that's why I say, like, I have so much to do and so much energy that I want to experience. So
that's amazing. So I graduated a couple of years ago, and my certificate said Harry on it, which is the first time I ever had like a certificate that said my name on it. And that was really, because it's kind of an official process, it kind of hit differently than a lot of other things. I could see my name on a register, I could see my name, like on a piece of paper, but to have a certificate, something official, was really like a monumental moment for me as well. So I am absolutely sure you'll, absolutely love that.
It's right. It's so validating to see your name on something tangible or like official. And I had the same reaction, especially on my diploma, that I got last year, because my first diploma is under my dead name. And so this is under and people, why don't you change it? I don't want to change it, because that's still part of me. Even though it was dark, like, don't regret, don't let the past, like, that still shows me that got me where I was today. So yeah, but to see your name on anything, even when they write it on a coffee mug at Starbucks coffee, they write Jillian, I smile. So that's our superpower of being trans, is that we can live in the moment and appreciate the littlest things.
Yeah, and that leads me really nicely onto my next comment, which is kind of about self-care, because you speak a lot at the end of the book about taking care of yourself and finding peace. But also, I think trans, for me, is in itself like the biggest act of self-care that you can really give yourself, is that you embrace this part of who you are. But also it is in finding those little moments, whether it is, a coffee cup at Starbucks, or it's someone shouting your name and you turn around, or whether it's, finding your certificate with your name on it, or whatever that might be. What for you would you say are your like go-to self-care tips if you find yourself getting a little bit low or a little bit lost? What would you advise, like, I don't know, your top 3 self-care tips, I suppose?
Right. That's a great question. That's like I try to get so many of them. I think one of the things is when I will just go out with the circle of friends who make me feel just like love for who I am, and we go out, and it's just as simply as going out for coffee and just talking. I don't know. It's hard to explain those moments, just because I never had that. And so just talking and spending a girls' night out with these few people really, really brings me back. It just really validates, as to how far I've come. My other ones are just, they're just simple little things, besides hanging out with the people that I love. Sometimes it's, wow, I'm really thinking about it. Like, I do so many of them that I can't think of one, but I think it's just a combination of a lot of activities that I do. Or I will look back at, sometimes I will look back at where I was, like on my journal, and where I am today. That's really, really, like, gives me power to realize how I've come and be proud of myself. And that don't let anything stop you. So that's really validating for me. And then it is as simple as just if I go to the beach and just hanging on there, and people say hi, and just like they're doing with everybody else. So it could be the biggest things or the little things that just bring me back down, or to that great place where, you know, I feel really good.
Speaking about the beach, I remember that you've included a photo in your book, which is you on the beach, and
Yeah.
you've got a caption underneath that says that you were pre-surgeries. I think maybe you'd only been maybe 2 years into transition. And
Yes.
you said underneath, you've got to get creative with clothing. So my question to you is, how do you find clothing going into, 50, 60-year-old women's clothing, rather than having, a progressive, or, usually a woman would have like a progressive of different clothing. How have you found that? How have you found clothing? How have you found going to clothing shops? And you said be creative. So is that you saying I'm willing to explore everything? Like, how is that for you?
Mostly everything. Yeah, you know, luckily for me, I had a great ally through my transition. She's a cis female who was just beyond amazing, you know, and so she was with me. The funny story is she wanted to date me. She asked me out. This was before I just started transitioning, so I was still presenting as male. And I don't think she had any idea of what she was getting into. However, you know, we ended up being friends. You know, I wanted her in my life, but as a friend, and so she went through my whole journey with me. And I knew nothing about clothing. I didn't know much, and so she was a big help as far as, you know, going sizes and what looks good. I'm like, and of course everything was way too short because I wanted to wear short stuff. Like we go. It's a phase. It's in my book, all these phases. But you know, honestly, I looked at my body, and instead of tearing it apart, like, why can't I be shorter? Why can't I be thinner? Why can't I have bigger boobs? But I looked at what, like, I liked. And for instance, I love my legs. Okay. I'm lucky. So when I went and bought that bathing suit, you know, I got the bathing suit, but it's a skirt. So I didn't have to worry about anything because, you know, I haven't had surgery there. But it looked really good. And then the top, I just found a bikini top that, yeah, I don't have big boobs, but it looked good. And you make it work. And that's not going to be for everybody. You just experiment and try different things, and just, you can be confident. If you are confident, it comes from here, not your body. If what you pick is you're really confident in, you're going to make it work. So that's why I said, just, you can make anything happen. I mean, that was hardly any hormones, no surgery. And I look at that picture and I'm like, wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, you look very, very happy in the photo.
Yeah.
It brought me a lot of joy to see that. So we're nearly out of time. I'm just going to ask a few more questions while we still got you. Thanks so much for sparing some time to say. So I know that you work a lot with trans youth, and you know, you've spoken about the groups that you have here. What are the main differences you see in them? Do you see them having a really hopeful future, really inclusive future? What are the differences? Are they phased by any things that you were phased with when you were younger and beginning your transition? Or
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So working with trans youth is a big passion of mine, you know, again, because I've seen what I've gone through, and working with them, I see they have a lot more resources, but that doesn't mean it's easier for them. They still have to get to those resources. They still have to go through family who aren't accepting and friends who are rejecting. But I do see a lot more opportunity for them, and I'm here to make it available to them, and I'm here to encourage them, because I see a lot of youth that were in a tough spot, you know, and so I definitely see a big difference, you know, today where they are as to where I was, because I didn't have those opportunities. So I'm here to make sure that they are going to have these opportunities, you know, to be who they really are, and that it's okay, and that they're awesome just being themselves. So that's,
yeah,
you know, that part.
absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree. I think no matter what age you are, you know, there's similar struggles depending on, you know, they might change slightly depending on, you know, other things in your life, but the core things remain the same.
Yeah.
terms of like an understanding, embracing yourself, living in a world that is really designed for cis people, because 90%, 99% of the world is cis, right? So we've got to navigate a world that they have made. So I completely agree. So you're rewriting your life. Literally, you're doing a new diploma. You're working with trans youth. You're training to be a therapist. It sounds like, everything is going your direction. Can I ask about dating? How you feel about that? Is that something? It's obviously a big part in your life beforehand. Is it something that you're looking at now, or are you completely happy with, concentrating on the whole range of things you got going on just now?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Dating. Well, as I put in the book, I had put dating on pause for obvious reasons. I transitioned, and then it's always on my mind. I won't lie. But right now, I'm hesitant to date only because of my schedule between school and between all the things that I'm doing. I do a million other different things. But also, I'm still trying to find that part of me of where in dating I'm going to be, who I'm going to date, who I want to date. I'm still working through that, and I have my own anxiety about dating. I worry. I have inner transphobic thoughts about it, like, oh, they're not going to think, or they're going to take advantage, or they think I'm a fetish, or so. Until I work through all that, I'm just continuing to put dating on hold. But again, you know how dating works. This could change in an instant, so I could be a liar tomorrow. But I think right now I'm going to put it on hold because I'm still trying to figure a few more things out on that. So yeah,
like you've got a lot going on as well between transitioning, also your stuff with trans youth and just with your own transition, and also graduating in school. It sounds like there's a lot going on there already.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 minutes left. So if you've got any more questions, please do put them in the chat, and I will ask them. But I've just got one more before you. So, yes, I've not asked about this yet. Actually, it's not come up. But you speak in your book about employment and the sort of difficulty with transitioning. When you're going through employment, similar to how you would transition within school, and knowing your rights you talk about, and like pensions and all these kind of things. Did you transition whilst you were in employment? And if you did, how was that for you? And sort of how have you tried to navigate that with your past employees and getting references and that kind of thing?
Right. That was pretty challenging. I was in school also. Well, I transitioned. I had like part-time jobs, but luckily for me, I work at a theater. Okay. So I guess if you're going to transition to, like a Broadway theater. So it was like one of my jobs while I was going to school, but it was still scary, like people knew me that like 5 years as a male. And then all of a sudden one day I started wearing the female attire, call me this thing. And there were some challenges. Not everybody understood it, but the worst thing is like, well, I don't get it, but I'll respect what you want. That was probably the worst reaction. But there were other times I was going to interviews. I was in real estate at the time, and I got the funny looks. I got like, you could tell they were clocking me. They knew what was going on. But then I realized, I'm like, screw this. I'm going to get into a profession that's going to welcome who I am. So that's what I did. I was in the theater, and then I got into social work and therapy, and there's a big demand. So I always say, yeah, I had to get out of real estate. I had to make kind of a career change, but get around it. Like, get into an area where they're going to accept you. And if you love where you are, right, know your laws, know your rights. You should never have to compromise who you are for any business, ever, ever, ever.
What I'm constantly inspired by you and by your book about is that you change things for yourself. If you're unhappy in your job, so you changed it, and you're unhappy in yourself, you changed it, and you found that courage to be your authentic self, and then you're sharing this with others. I think that's really admirable, very inspiring. Thank you. So we are at the end of our interview just now, and I want to thank you very much for your time, and thanks everyone for watching. If you'd like to order Jillian's book, it's out now. It's in bookshops. I know it's on Gaze the Word, which is in London. It's also on Amazon. You can also purchase it from the Jessica Kingsley Publishers website. And we have a discount code, which is ODL21, if you would like to use that as well. And Jillian, thank you so much for your time and spending time to speak with us quite openly about your book. I know it could be quite scary.
Well, again, thank you so much. This was an honor. And I just want to say really quickly, because I just saw this comment about, it says, I'm trans, I feel stuck in limbo. I just really feel stuck. Please, the only way you get unstuck is reach out to people, find people. There are groups, there are websites. Reach out. That you will get unstuck, but you can't do this journey alone. So I just saw that comment because I know what it's like to feel stuck, so anyway, but thank you. Yes, thank you so much. And just be who you are, and you're not alone. You're not alone. I just want everyone to be, who they deserve to be.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the comments. And yeah, thank you everyone. I will put this, if you've missed any of it or you want to catch it up, I'll put it onto the IGTV. You can catch it there, and it's also going to go into YouTube. So it'll be there. Other than that, thanks very much.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks
so much. Bye bye now.